we're back for another week to the Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour with Jay Weidner. We've been on for a while now, and we've had a lot of good guests, but tonight we got somebody really special. We got James Kunstler. He is the author of the great book, The Long Emergency, and a book that I really like, A World Made by Hand, which I think would make a great low-budget movie. If anybody's out there listening that wants to make a movie that's a great low budget. James has really gone into this whole thing about the peak oil and where we're headed over the next few years, and it's a real pleasure to talk to you. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Hey, listen, I was wondering, have you ever read the book The Fourth Turning?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it kind of fits in a realpolitik with what you're talking about. I just finished it a few weeks ago. I was really impressed.
Yeah, I admired it quite a bit, and it's it's maybe not what it seems to be from its title. It seems to have kind of a sci-fi kind of odor about it, but in fact it's a very serious meditation on the generational cycles of history. And the various moods of history, and I think that it's got a lot of truth in it.
Yeah, I say that because last night, for the first time, my wife forced me to watch Gone with the Wind, and I really didn't like the film, but while I was watching it, I realized that it was a film that was made during the last fourth turning about the previous fourth turning, which was the Civil War. And it was, of course, made at the height of the Depression, which was the last fourth turning, of which we're headed towards the next fourth turning, according to the book, of which I'm sure the audience is going, huh? What are we talking about? And basically, it's just this theory that about every 85 years or one long generation, the United States goes through a major upheaval, from the Revolution to the Civil War to the Great Depression to the Long Emergency, which is a great name for what's going on here, because it's not a Great Depression. It's worse in some ways than that. But this show, actually, James, would like to concentrate on the good side of things. But before we do that, let's talk about what you're talking about. And you're not, a lot of people get upset when you say that there's, peak oil and that the world's running out of oil, and the oil companies will tell you that there's more oil on Earth than we could use in a million years. And what they're saying probably is true. But you're saying something different. You're saying that the crude oil, or the sweet crude, the oil that's easy to get to, that's what we're running out of, right?
Well, in a way, although we're beyond that now. I think what I wrote in the book, The Long Emergency, was that it was about the end of cheap oil. That was the point, the end of cheap oil. But I think we're seeing some other things. There have been quite a few developments since 2005, when the Long Emergency was published, and the oil problem is still very much with us. Of course, it was never really about running out of oil per se. It was more about the failure and instability of the complex systems that we depend on for daily life in America in the face of these instabilities and in the face of these discontinuities. And by complex systems, I mean the way we feed ourselves, industrial-style farming, the way we do commerce and trade, the way we do transportation, the way we inhabit the landscape. All these systems of daily life are going to have to change pretty severely in the face of the circumstances that are upon us. And we're not prepared to think about that at all.
No, it's a huge gap in people's thinking, and it's really almost, I don't know, I can't quite explain it. It's almost like a psychopathic reaction to reality.
Well, let me try to explain it, because I don't think it's that abstruse, really. And I've said this to many a college lecture audience. I think that we are I think we're in the grips of something that I would describe as the psychology of previous investment. And by the way, this is not a completely original thought either. This is the same as the concept of sunk cost. And the psychology of previous investment really means that you've put so much of the resources of your culture, the collective resources. You've invested so much of the collective resources in a certain system, a certain way of doing things, that you can't imagine changing it or letting go of it. And that's sort of what we've done. We've elaborated a system for daily life in America that's very rigid and unadaptable. And we've invested also our national identity in it. And now we can't let go of it. And I'm especially talking about not something abstract, but about a very practical thing. The living arrangement that we have in America, which is essentially the suburban living arrangement. And the investments we've made in that are so horrendous and gigantic that we can't imagine having to live without it or do without it or change it or even modify it much. So we're stuck with these investments at the moment, and it's the biggest obstacle for us to think about what we really have to do.
Well, I can't even imagine, actually. If you go out to Riverside, California, or San Bernardino County, which is east of Los Angeles, you're dealing with about a 35% foreclosure rate, and they're turning into ghost towns. There are these gigantic suburbs, and I'm sure I wouldn't live there, and if someone's living there, they have my pity. But I'm sure the crime rates are starting to climb. People have found a way to absorb the crush of what's happened in the last year by, they had a lot of goods stored, they had a lot of wealth. They're grouping together with their families, and they think that it's over when, in fact, commercial real estate is really getting into a dangerous position right now, where it could just turn into almost a chain reaction, and they could just all be closed down. So we're dealing with this thing, and I don't think anyone really realizes what kind of change is really at hand, where it's truly going to be a cultural change.
There's been one major change since I published The Lung Emergency, or rather since the Atlantic Monthly Press published it in 2005. And that is that we destroyed the banking system, or the banking system destroyed itself. And we now find ourselves, and this is really the larger problem at the moment, and it even has implications for the energy situation. But the larger problem is that we can't generate any more debt. We can't pay back any of the debt at all levels, the household level, the corporate level, or the government level. We are comprehensively broke, and we can no longer run a revolving credit society. And that's really the larger problem now. We may not, we may find that we're out of capital well before we're out of gas. And this has implications for the whole oil industry as well, because what we're seeing is a lack of capital to make investments in new oil exploration and development, and a lot of the projects that we had hoped would be coming online to address the ongoing depletions, those projects are not coming online, and we're not going to compensate for the ongoing depletion. And this is going to have kind of an accelerating, snowballing effect.